Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the WattLife. We're racing a Sunday night Zwift Academy Race to Cobbled Climb Classic. And for anyone with a set of eagle eyes on them, you will see Mr. Erik Lee in the chat sending me private messages before the race has even begun as we get underway for what is actually a stormer of an event. 116 riders taking part in the UK 7 p.m. race. Like I said, it's the second Zwift Academy event. I hadn't actually intended on recording this one or throwing it out there on YouTube. What happened was a friend of mine had raced this race earlier in the week. She wasn't very happy with her result and asked whether I wanted to give it a crack on Sunday night. And I said, yeah, sure, let's give it a go. So this is me. It came out hot. I don't know what anyone else is thinking. I'll give you some stats, and some of these stats will surprise you on the race. This race came out hot. The first 15, 20, 30 seconds were actually pretty steaming hard. Big group, 116 riders, a lot of good riders in there, some names that I recognize. P.T. Wheatshaw's up there. So you always know it's going to be a competitive race. Obviously having Erik in there, that means someone's going to be driving the bus. I don't think he's legally allowed to drive a bus, but he certainly gives it his best shot. So this is a bit of a race where Erik and I, it's the first time we've crossed paths in Watopia, and it was a fun head-to-head race, almost a head-to-head race by the end of it. So like I was saying, it's quite an interesting race from the stats because we were doing the Cobbled Climb. It's 3 loops. Obviously, you repeat the loop 3 times. Very short lead in, so we're into the race now. We've just crossed the start-finish line. And a lot of the race is fundamentally flat other than 3 climbs. It's a series of 3 different climbs. The first 2 climbs are the Cobbled Climbs, and then the last climb is the climb up to the start-finish. And that is basically the thing that breaks this group up, that breaks the race up, that changes the dynamic of the race completely. So the stats on the race itself, as I said, Cobbled Climb is in Cat B, it's a 27.8 kilometer race. Welcome to the metric system, guys. 403 meters of vert over the course of these 3 laps. So there we go. As far as some of the stats on the actual race go, and this is what I found really interesting. Obviously, with such big numbers in the event, the first lap, guys, was our fastest. The second lap, let me just get this correct for you. Cobbled Climb. We did the first lap in I did the first lap in 13:09, right? And that was my fastest loop. I'm pretty sure the second lap was my third fastest in 14:0. Sorry. My second lap was my second fastest in 14:04. Then my third lap was exactly the same in 14:04 again. So it's interesting that the first lap was almost a minute faster because we had such a big group. We actually pushed a little bit harder for some of there was no recovery needed. On the second lap, we definitely took a breather to recover and just try and catch our breath after some of the hard efforts on the climbs. So we're not too far off the actual first climb, the first of the Cobbled Climbs, and there's 2 in each loop. This one is called the Libby Hill KOM. Now, what you will notice is that people like to position well, and obviously the larger group means that more people will charge to the front of it sooner. So effectively, the climb on this one starts way sooner because it's such a big group. People are joshing for position early on. So this climb actually starts hot. It starts super early. For me, the Libby KOM on lap 1, I hold 418 watts, and it takes me 1 minute 26 to do this little cobbled section up through the top. Like, interestingly, this actually, although it's the fastest time I go up the hill climb, it's not the highest watts that I hold for it. On lap 3, I hold more watts. It's just slower because there's less people in the group, which I think is really interesting. And these are the things that you got to bear in mind if you're diving into Zwift racing, because the dynamics within Zwift, obviously these larger groups, the power-ups that you have, can make such a difference. Because I think on my third lap, I hold 420 odd watts, and I'm 3-4 seconds slower, 4-5 seconds slower. Whereas big group, loads of people, this one, we get in it early, it's 418 watts and it's my fastest time up and through it. Just the sheer numbers in the group just mean that that's what kind of basically what carries our group forward. And you can see on the mini map top right that the hills are the things that just break this race up completely, and it's exactly why I loved it. From a personal perspective, guys, I literally am kind of a little bit shocked at the way that I'm reacting kind of to these races. Previously, I was having a chat because basically I'm doing this race whilst on a phone call to my friend, and she's sat in the group as well. We're both in the front group. She only weighs like 56, maybe even less than that. Like, she's super light, like 52 kg, very light. Typical. She's moved over from marathon running whilst picking up recovering from a bit of an injury, and so we're on a call and chatting through things. And she finds it obviously that she gets dropped on some of the harder efforts where it's just pure watts, because she just can't put out that same energy or the same power for the same amount of time. But she does phenomenally well. So we're chatting away. One of the things I was saying to her after the event was quite simply that I've noticed that even though my watts are kind of creeping up slightly, and like there's no big jump, there's nothing that like I'm kind of like, oh wow, that's a big change even in the 6 to 8 months that I've been doing this. But what I have noticed, and what is a really big change, is the amount of time I can hold these things. So going up these cobbled climbs and going up the hill up to the finish line, I'm just so surprised at how long I can sustain efforts for and then ride off. And these are things that would absolutely destroy me. Like, if you want to have a little laugh at yourself, go and watch one of my videos where it's like I think there's one called Cat C Rider Tries Cat B. And honest to God, like, I am a completely different rider to that person back then because of and it's not because I can put out more watts. Yes, I can put out more watts than then, but you got to remember that was literally 6 or 8 months ago. That was a long time ago. But it's more the fact that I can sustain the watts that I am putting out for a longer period of time. And that has been a huge, huge difference. I really, 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 in the last 2-3 weeks, that's what I've been noticing. And that's what's been making the difference. So I think also you get like a punch rating on Zwift Power, and we'll come into power numbers in a minute for the race. But I eventually think that punch number for me, which currently sits under 50%, is going to start moving up, because I'm able to put the watts on and sustain it and repeat it. And that's the interesting thing. And that's where my development feels like it's come from. I'm never going to be a complete watt monster. You know, I weigh 76 kg. I'm doing everything I can to improve. But my improvement, you know, sometimes we look for improvement in like total number of watts, when in actual fact, what I'm realizing is that I'm improving massively in terms of performance, quite simply from being able to sustain watts. And that's been huge. And I think that's like the last 2-3 weeks just really felt they've clicked in my ability to put watts on, hold it, and then you'll see me get out the saddle and just push and be able to push that little bit more, which has been the real defining factor in helping me improve as a cyclist, because I'm just not getting to the point where I'm being overridden by lactic, or I'm being overridden by just being completely anaerobic and not being able to provide enough oxygen into my system, and I just have to stop cycling. You'll watch some of my races from 3 months ago. I get myself into a position where I'm cycling, and then I just have to stop. It gets to the point where it just has to stop. Whereas with this now, I'm able to maybe just back off slightly, and then kind of keep trying to sustain it. So that's been like a huge difference for me. And I guess that's like, you know, I'm sure some people will leave a comment just saying that, you know, my engine is building. And I do, obviously I agree with that. Yeah, it's great to see. But I just want to say to anyone that is kind of struggling, like, don't always look at trying to improve your top end like figure. You know, if you're doing a climb at 400 watts, don't always look to do it at 420, 440. Sometimes just think, actually, if I can just hold that 400 or that 380 for longer, that is going to be a bigger win. But, you know, each to their own. Anyway, what do I know? I just like cycling on the internet. Anyway, this was super fun because we had this massive group. Each time we did this hill, we were breaking the group up. We're now on lap 2. The chase group that we had left behind on lap 1 has now just caught us up, literally just now coming into the Libby Hill KOM again. This time on the second loop, my Libby KOM was 1 second slower, holding 410 watts. So again, grab myself a feather, dive in on the power up. This is also my first ride on my newly acquired Tron bike, guys. I feel like I am properly one of the lads now. So really enjoying that. That was I went for a nice little kind of turquoisey blue number, and it seems like everyone else has done the same thing. But I'm properly one of, like, you know, do I get like a little administrative, like, little comfortable welcome into the YouTube crew now that I've got a Tron bike and I have a little YouTube channel? I feel like I should. But my watts were pretty similar going up the Libby KOM each time. In fact, the third lap was actually my highest. So again, just like a nice indicator that even though, even though I'm not winning races or even getting near winning races, you know, as you will see at the end of this and how this one pans out, I still kind of feel like my progression is definitely moving forward. And that's what I would suggest or encourage anyone to do, is just stick with it, because take the little wins. So the hard thing was, obviously, I'm chatting to my friend Anna during this whole race, so I've tried to kind of turn the background of what's actually going on in my living room down, because we're chatting the whole time. I'm giving her feedback on where the group is. We drop her on this lap, so she falls off the front group with however many people. I think there's like 35, 40 riders up here now as we come to the second Cobbled Climb. What is this one actually called? Let me see. Cobbled Climb 23rd Street KOM. Is that what it is? Just like a complete 30-second punch up the hill. So first time round, just holding 477 watts. Let me see. 23rd Street KOM. Second time round, holding 515 watts. So I gave it a few more beans on that one, and then last time 493. So first time was probably the easiest. Second and third were my two bigger ones, and then actually I end up kind of going fastest on the last lap. And it's always really interesting because, you know, my watts up each of these climbs never actually correlates to my fastest time. It's obviously based on the number of riders you are with and whether you use your power up or what power up you actually have. The nice thing was that by the end of lap 2, our front group had dwindled. So obviously our first lap was a minute faster than any of our other laps, quite simply because we had a massive group of over 100 people. So someone was always just pushing the pace, and we were moving along nicely. And then obviously that got broken up after a few of the climbs on the first lap, and then obviously smaller numbers, less people kind of taking the bull by the horns and pushing the race forward. So in many respects, we were all using the flat sections after we go through the start-finish as a bit of a chance to rest and recover before we hit the Cobbled Climbs for the last time. And that's exactly what happens. I actually really enjoyed this course. I think it's quite suited to my style of riding. I don't necessarily think in terms of, you know, if you haven't done it, register to, I think it's called Zwift Power app. Just Google that in a web browser, Zwift Power app, and it gives you some feedback on your stats and how you're performing based on your Zwift Power account. And I don't actually have a phenotype when it comes to cycling yet. I'm very much, I mean, it does bracket me as a particular phenotype, but all my kind of my sprints, my climbs, they're all very similar. So there's no like outstanding bracket at which I am performing well in at the moment. I'm just kind of like middle of the road for all of them. So I haven't quite, you know, I don't really have a niche to step into and try and focus on. But going into this last lap, we dwindled the group down, and I am kind of surprised. I don't want to say surprised, because I obviously put the hard work in to try and improve, and like I'm just trying to just go with it at the same time. You know, I find myself in the front group on lap 3 at what I would say is like a quite a aggressive Cat B race. Like, I love being here. Like, it makes me feel good just being sat in the front group on the last lap. In terms of like achievement, it doesn't matter where I come. Like, I just love the fact that I get to do this, and I'm managing to hold some of these groups. But I also understand that I've been putting in the extra effort on those climbs and I think that's what takes its toll. I put the effort on the climbs to make sure I didn't get dropped from that front group, because getting dropped from this front group is basically death. You're not going to catch them back up again. So I put a lot of effort into just trying to stay with the front guys. And then you can see on my power chart at the bottom that we obviously just come off the power when we are just kind of taking the easy part of the lap. I actually finished this race in 42 minutes, holding 3.6 watts per kg, which is 274 watts. Now that's normalized to 304. Guys, that's 42 minutes and 304 watts normalized. For me to hold, for me to register 4 watts per kg, that's 309 watts. So I am kind of feel like I'm getting close to these, like, quite impressive, for me anyway, as a 41-year-old male, performance numbers again. So, I am just kind of a little bit shocked every time these things are happening, but a lot of it is just being consistent and being willing to kind of dive in and give it a crack. Third time up, the Cobbled Climb. I actually really enjoyed this one. It's hard. The thing that I was struggling with within the race was like trying to tell who within the group were the people who were going to push on. And as we get up all these climbs, or as we go through these little climbs, you can see that a few riders like gravitate towards the front of the group, who are obviously going to be kind of very good riders, very capable riders. So I think the telling fact that, I'm kind of middle back of the pack going up these little climbs, even on lap 3, just does suggest to me that I wasn't really going to have a shot going up the finish straight, the start up towards the start finish on at the very end. But I wasn't really disheartened by that, because obviously if I got disheartened by things, I wouldn't even enter this race, because I'd just be kind of absolutely killed off and wouldn't even bother. So my goal is always just try and stay with the front group, do what I can. And you can see that a few guys are riding off front. You can see that as a group, we are stretched out. But even as a group, starting with 116, 117 people, to then be within the top 20, coming down the last lap and riding for 37 minutes. Guys, I am literally over the moon with this. Third time up, the 23rd Street KOM. What do I hold for this one? 493 watts for 28 seconds. Again, another good one. Cheeky little feather. A lot of my power-ups for the last lap were bang on. I got exactly what you'd want. A couple of feathers. And then I think I get a draft boost going into the last climb up towards the start-finish. But again, put the power on, positioning well. It's really hurting. But the fact that I'm able to then continue cycling is the thing that just kind of, really encourages me in terms of progression, in that makes me feel like I have progressed, because ordinarily I'd kind of get to the top of that and just feel like I completely have to stop pedaling, I have to stop turning the chains, and I'm completely out of it. I knew that I wasn't really going to have a shot, because this is an uphill finish on a race where I am actually just struggling to hold the front group. But the one thing I did know was that hopefully everyone would be struggling. Hopefully Erik is particularly struggling. And I could just see that obviously on the chart on the right with all the names that Erik was still in the mix. I had a few messages with him during the race, just making sure he was still in the mix. And Erik is, I keep an eye on everyone's numbers. I can tell that obviously Erik is a stronger rider than me. So to be in and around in the midst of Erik's wheel was absolutely fantastic. I enjoyed it. I love the fact that we finally got a chance to dive in a race together, and I didn't fall off the back completely and just kind of ruin it from everyone's perspective, particularly mine. But we come into this last climb, which is I believe it's called the Governor Street climb. And I wish I had more in me. My heart rate is killing. We're 40 minutes into this race. I'm just looking on the right, and I can see Erik's one place behind me. But that does not last long, as he just casually drifts on past me. I can only hope that he's shouting and screaming in his garage in Canada, just whooping at the fact that he's managed to put an absolute whipping on me, as he now just kind of casually melts off into the distance with the rest. But mind you guys, we've all got Tron bikes now, so we're all as cool as each other, which I'm happy with. But no, strong finish from Erik as he kind of just drifts past me. ultimately, yes, I would probably say I'm the last rider in the front group. But again, I'm not focusing on that. It still feels like a good position to be. It still feels like a win for me. Anna had a great race. She comes in kind of top 30. Guys, I finish a race top 20. Super happy with it. Like, it feels like we are progressing. I think on Zwift Power, I might even come in 16th, 42 minutes, holding 3.6 watts per kg. Yeah, just super happy with it. And for a race that I wasn't actually kind of really meant to be doing, because I was just on the phone with a mate, guys, this went so well, and I'm really happy. Look, dead last out the front group, but nonetheless, absolutely loved it. I've got no sprint this time, but still, like, guys, that was great. I appreciate you, Erik. Guy, fun messaging, fun chatting. And I will see you guys on another race soon. Oh, look at that, holding 3.8 watts for 20 minutes. Pretty proud of that. Cheers, guys. Well done to everyone that joined in.